If the state of Illinois insists on targeting homeschool families under the false guise of education, neglect, and abuse, then it's only fair we examine the real neglect that's happening in public schools, where only 35% of students statewide are proficient in reading and only 28% in math, where systemic sexual abuse remains under investigation. As taxpayers, we demand accountability. Why are we funding failure? Why are faith-filled, high-achieving parents the ones being vilified? Why are families who dare to protect their children's innocence, faith, and identity labeled as extremists? This isn't just an attack on homeschooling. It is a violation of our constitutional rights, and we're going to dive into it. Stay tuned. Hi, everyone. I'm Latasha H, and welcome to the Be Louder from the Bottom Up podcast, where we dive into the intersection of faith, politics, and culture, and how each directly impacts our families and our daily lives. Today, we're going to tackle a very serious issue here in Illinois, House Bill 2827, the Homeschool Act, a very dangerous proposal that falsely paints us homeschool families as potential child abusers and neglectful parents. This bill will force us to prove ourselves innocent just to educate our children at home. Now, we know this isn't just about homeschooling. This is about our rights. This is about your rights to parent, to educate, and to live by your values without government overreach. So let's break it down and expose the core legal constitutional issues that I believe is behind this bill. Let's begin. I'm going to briefly discuss four core concepts of this bill. The first one is educational neglect, or is it policy manipulation? Let's begin with what HB 2827 is really built on: mistrust of parents. The state is implying that homeschoolers are potentially abusive and neglecting our children's education simply because we don't want to file a form or because we don't want to use the public education system. But here's the truth, and we know this: there is no data to suggest that homeschool families are broadly guilty of educational neglect. In fact, numerous studies show that homeschool students outperform their public school peers in academic achievement, civic engagement, and college readiness. Meanwhile, the Illinois State Board of Education reports catastrophic proficiency levels in public schools. They report that only 35% of students in public school can read at grade level, and only 28% can do math proficiently. And in CPS, it gets even worse. Only 29% is proficient in reading and 18% in math. And then the Black students, 20% only proficient in reading and 9% can do math on grade level. This is woefully unconscionable. This is abject failure. Yet, it's homeschoolers under suspicion. This baseless assumption against homeschoolers turns responsible parents into suspects, stripping us of our rights to raise our children and to educate them in peace. So we know this is not about keeping kids safe. This is not about victims. This is about expanding government control into our homes, treating us like criminals unless we can prove otherwise. That's not oversight. That's overreach. So what's the real agenda? The real agenda is expanding state control over families' life, pretending that every family needs oversight. That's not protection. This is persecution. And really, in my opinion, my husband's opinion, and many others, this is religious persecution. The second core concept that I want to briefly discuss, what I believe is a violation of taxpayers' funding, we're going to follow the money and who's really failing the children. Illinois public schools received over $10 billion annually. Chicago public schools alone pulled in about $9.4 billion last year, nearly $29,000 per student. Now, despite this, we know the test scores are dismal, violence is rampant, and the graduation rates are seemingly increasing. Yet instead of addressing the system's failure, they're targeting successful, accountable parents. We know HB 2827 is not about safety. It's about funding control and silencing dissent. Here's the part that they don't want us to question. Where's all this money going? With this abject failure, what exactly are we funding? In 2024, Illinois public schools spent again an average of $21,000 per student, totaling approximately $40.4 billion statewide. Chicago public schools had even higher expenditures, ranging from $29,000 to $34,000, marking a 97% increase since 2012. Now, despite these substantial investments, we know the academic outcomes are still not improving for these babies. For instance, Douglas Academy High School has faced criticism for their poor academic performance because the reports indicate that none of the students can read on grade level. And the last I checked, there's only 35 students in the school with a capacity of 900. Now, with all this money, the results are disastrous. Reading, math, graduation rates, all in crisis mode. Violence and dropout rates are climbing. So the question is, why are we still paying into a system that clearly does not work? And now, instead of cleaning up their mess, lawmakers, Representative Terry Costa Howard and her co-sponsors, want to punish families who found a better way, families who choose to educate their children with fewer resources and better outcomes outside of government education. So the real abuse isn't in our homes. It is in this corrupt pipeline of tax dollars funding failure. This is not just educational failure. With the government education is financial mismanagement. We as taxpayers are footing bills for a system that fails to deliver, while parents, like myself and many others who choose to educate our children at home, we're threatened with state surveillance. This is not justice. This is betrayal. This is not how a republic works. This is how tyranny works. Now, I want to briefly discuss the third core concept, the legal violations, I believe, hidden in plain sight. Now, let's dive into a little deeper into what HB 2827 could actually mean for us as homeschool families in Illinois if passed, and how it will violate our core constitutional protections. Under this bill, homeschool families will be treated as suspects by default. Parents will be required to submit annual forms to the state disclosing our educational plans without any cause or evidence of wrongdoing or due process. So this kind of blanket policy flips the presumptions of innocence on its head. The 14th Amendment violation, unequal protection under the law. If you're a public school parent, the way this bill is written, you're trusted by default. Public school families they are not required to prove to the state each year that they're not neglecting their children. Why are homeschoolers being singled out? So this unequal application of state law creates a discriminatory double standard. So it divides families into two classes, those that the state trusts, public schoolers, and those that it doesn't, homeschoolers. That's why that's government saying, some parents are more equal than others. So if HB 2827 passes, it will pave the way for the state to sanction prejudice, setting a dangerous precedent of targeting minority education groups without legal justification, targeting homeschoolers. So I did some research, to just break this down just a little bit further. So again, the Fourth Amendment, that's another one that I'm looking at, with the unlawful search and seizure, of how this will work. So this bill may permit state authorities or even mandate reporters like teachers and doctors, caseworkers, to initiate home inspections or investigations. So you got the truancy officers, the ROEs, etc., based on vague sense of concern or bureaucratic oversight. Also under the Fourth Amendment, no warrant, no profitable cause, just suspicion rooted in educational choice over a form or our belief that doesn't align with the state. So, for example, if we teach from the Bible like I do, or we don't affirm gender ideology, this, could they call this abuse? For example, again, if a parent refused to use the state-approved curriculum that's here in Illinois that includes the LGBTQ plus ideology and content and history, Could this be construed as neglect or abuse, leading to, again, unwarranted intrusions into our family's private life? And then the First Amendment, of course, with violating religious liberty. We're under attack from this. Even without this bill, our religious liberties and religious persecutions under attack across the country. So many families homeschool because of their biblical values or moral teaching. Many families exit government education because of this. So HB 2827 would label us, and it is labeling us as extremists if we oppose these government ideologies, this agenda, especially on topics like gender identity, sexuality, or religion. So most of us know Representative Tara Costa Howard is in lockstep with the Coalition for Responsible Education, CRHE. A lot of us are fully aware of this because it seems that they're courting or lobbying legislators across the state, across the country, right? So Representative Tara Costa Howard has taken language from their 2024 Make Homeschool Safe Act, their model language, which questions parental trustworthiness and calls for more government oversight for children's safety, framing parents that want to control their children, because our children have been given to us by God. We have been given the authority by God. We've been given the, if you will, absolute control over our children by God. We're labeled as extremists. So this view holds, again, parents controlling their children's life, basically trying to protect and shield them from your ideology, just to be frank, from which is against Christianity, which is against our biblical values, which is against our biblical worldview, right? That we're extremists due to, many parents across the country that have worked to ban sexually explicit books, protecting children, their children. Let's be clear, their children, our children, from the LGBTQ plus ideology. Then we definitely want to reject unbiblical medical procedures, right? We don't want our children's healthy genitals mutilated. They're our children, okay? We do not deny our children's biological identity. DNA tells you who you are. Chromosomes tell you who you are. Your blood tell you who you are. Your skeletal system tells you who you are. Okay. So we're not going to deny that. Okay. We're not going to confuse our children concerning that. And what is happening in government schools, you are confusing them. And then you want to lock us up or penalize us or take our children from us because we don't want to confirm your confusion. You're confused. So parents, get your kids out of public schools. So this one right here undeniably is a violation of religious beliefs and a direct infringement on the First Amendment, which protects free exercise of religion. So again, by framing us, those of us that have deeply held religious beliefs, mine is Christianity, Genesis to Revelation, is biblical. This bill weaponizes the state's power against me, against hundreds and hundreds of families in Illinois and across the country, thereby again constituting religious persecution. It's simple. It's right there. The next one that I've been researching and looking at, so I went over the 14th, the 4th, and the First Amendment. Now the Privacy Act. So again, this forced disclosure without cause. So this bill would mandate families to turn over private educational plans, personal information without any allegations of harm or misconduct. This violates the spirit of the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act and the Privacy Act of 1974, which protects individuals from unwarranted data collection by government agencies. So, what are all these implications? They have chilling effect. This is very dangerous. Parents may feel forced to self-censor or abandon homeschooling altogether for fear of government retaliation or being wrongly accused of neglect. Legal and financial burdens. Families may need to hire lawyers to deal with unnecessary child welfare investigations simply for choosing a non-traditional educational path, unconventional. Loss of autonomy. The government would gain sweeping authority to evaluate and judge how families educate, potentially outlawing religion or alternative educational philosophies. This is a precedent for more overreach. If Illinois passes this law, other states may follow suit, accelerating the criminalization of parental authority across the country. So HB 2827 is just not bad policy. It is a direct line to future oppression. That's what this is. We're at our last core concept. I'm going to briefly discuss the sexual abuse and safety violations in public schools. Public schools are in a crisis. So we're going to talk about what the state won't talk about, what they refuse to clean up in their own house. In 2023, Chicago Public Schools reported over 1,000 allegations of sexual misconduct involving students and staff. These are not isolated issues or incidents. There is a crisis going on in government schools. These babies are in harm's way. In fact, as of January 8, 2025, the CPS Office of the Inspector General called out failures in the system to properly vet employees, follow up on complaints, or protect children. And it's not just in Chicago. It's in Representative Terry Costa Howard's district as well, in DuPage County, in the suburbs. More than a dozen new cases of child sexual abuse in schools have been exposed, and some of them are still under investigation. Yet, instead of demanding accountability from their own system, these same lawmakers are pointing fingers at us, pointing fingers at the homeschool families. It's hypocrisy at its highest level. Now, add that to the violent climate in public schools. In 2022, Chicago police reported over 400 incidents involving firearms on or near school campuses, including students bringing guns to school and even shootings during school hours, shootings in broad daylight. Lockdowns are becoming normal. School should be a safe place. It's not a safe place for these kids anymore. It's a war zone. So where's the accountability? Why aren't these public schools held to the same scrutiny? Where's the mandatory reporting and the state level forms for them? No. Instead, they're turning the spotlight on us, turning the spotlight on homeschool families with no record of violence, no systemic abuse, and often far better academic outcomes. The reality is this is not about safety. It's about total control. It's about distracting you, the public, from the broken system they refuse to fix while vilifying the families who dare to exit. And we're not having it. HB 2827 is a smokescreen. It distracts from the government's failure to protect children under its own care, and it is targeting the very people who are doing the job they've abdicated, protecting, educating, and nourishing the next generation. This is about control, not safety. And yet, lawmakers push to investigate homeschoolers. This is hypocrisy at its finest. Hypocrisy is staggering. They ignore chaos in their own schools while attacking families who choose to educate their children at home. Listen, if we're going to talk about child safety, if we're going to talk about education neglect, if we're going to talk about abuse, especially sexual abuse or any form of abuse, we must start by cleaning our own house first. HB 2827 is not about protecting children. It's about controlling parents and taking away our God-given rights, our God-given authority, our God-given autonomy. It expands government power at the expense of our God-given constitutional rights. We must stand legally, legislatively, and spiritually. We're fighting against the kingdom of darkness. This is a holy war. This is a spiritual battle, because this isn't just about homeschooling. It's about protecting liberty for every family in Illinois and across this country. This is a globalist agenda, a global takeover. This is the one world government agenda. It is an antichrist move. And states like Illinois are testing grounds. Our children deserve better. Our families demand freedom, and we will not surrender it. We must fight back. We must contend for the faith. And those of you that may not be homeschooling because of Christianity, because of a biblical worldview. It is still a demonic attack to strip away your parental authority. So we have to stay vigilant. We have to stay informed. We have to keep applying pressure. The word of God says this: we must pray without ceasing, because the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man avail much. So continue to be louder for your children. And I thank you for tuning in. You have been listening to the Be Louder from the Bottom Up podcast. I love you with the love of the Lord. Be blessed.